Blade Runner. Rick Deckard hunts artificial humans called replicants in a rain-soaked future Los Angeles. But the 1982 film Blade Runner left audiences with one burning question. Is the hunter himself one of the hunted? The original theatrical ending deliberately avoided answering whether Harrison Ford's character is human or replicant, sparking debates that continued decades later. Director Ridley Scott released a director's cut in 1992 that included a unicorn origami figure left by another character, Gaff, suggesting Deckard's private dreams are known to others. A detail that would only be possible if his memories were implanted like other replicants. The film cost $28 million to produce, but earned only $32.9 million domestically in its initial run, becoming a commercial failure that later achieved cult classic status. Even the cast and crew remained divided, with Harrison Ford publicly disagreeing with Scott's interpretation that Deckard is a replicant. The 2017 sequel, Blade Runner 2049, deliberately kept this question unanswered, maintaining the ambiguity. Audiences found the ending confusing because it challenged the fundamental premise of the entire film. If the protagonist hunting replicants is himself a replicant, it undermines everything viewers thought they understood about the story, while simultaneously forcing them to confront the film's central question about what truly defines humanity. Brazil. Sam Lowry appears to escape a nightmarish bureaucratic dystopia with the woman he loves in Terry Gilliam's 1985 masterpiece, Brazil, but the triumphant finale shatters into something far darker. The film shows resistance fighters led by Harry Tuttle storming a torture chamber to rescue Sam, who then flees with his dream girl Jill to freedom in the countryside. However, the camera suddenly pulls back to reveal this entire escape sequence exists only in Sam's fractured mind while he sits catatonic in a torture chair, humming the Brazilian song Aquarela do Brasil with a vacant smile. Jack Lint, his former friend turned torturer, and Deputy Minister Helpman realize the interrogation has completely destroyed Sam's sanity, making him useless for extracting information. Universal Pictures chairman Sid Sheinberg hated this bleak conclusion and created a 94-minute version called Love Conquers All, with a happy ending, sparking a legendary Hollywood battle. Gilliam fought the studio for months, and his original 142-minute cut initially released only in Europe. The Los Angeles Film Critics Association awarded Brazil Best Picture in 1985, despite its lack of American release, forcing Universal to distribute Gilliam's 132-minute version. Audiences left theaters confused about whether Sam achieved victory through retreating into permanent fantasy or suffered complete defeat at the system's hands. The ending asks an unsettling question. Is escaping into delusion a form of freedom or the ultimate surrender? Inception's top. Dom Cobb finally returns home to his children in Christopher Nolan's 2010 thriller Inception, but the film's final image refuses to confirm whether he's actually escaped the dream world. Throughout the story, Leonardo DiCaprio's character uses a spinning top as his totem to distinguish reality from dreams. If the top stops spinning, he's in the real world. If it continues spinning indefinitely, he remains trapped in someone else's dream. The closing shot shows the top spinning on a table and beginning to wobble slightly before the screen cuts to black, never revealing whether it falls. Nolan intentionally crafted this ambiguous conclusion to encourage personal interpretation rather than providing a definitive answer. Some fans point to Cobb's wedding ring as the true indicator, noting he wears it in dreams but not in reality, though the final scene cuts away before viewers can check. Actor Michael Caine, who plays Cobb's father, revealed that no one told him any scene featuring his character represents reality, suggesting Cobb truly made it home. The confusion stems from Nolan forcing audiences to question whether objective truth matters more than subjective happiness. If Cobb believes he's home and feels complete peace with his children, does it matter whether the top eventually falls? The ending transformed from simple plot resolution into a philosophical debate about the nature of reality itself. Space Odyssey. Astronaut Dave Bowman defeats the rogue artificial intelligence HAL 9000 in Stanley Kubrick's 1968 epic 2001, A Space Odyssey, but what follows remains one of cinema's most bewildering sequences. After deactivating HAL during the Jupiter mission, Bowman encounters an alien monolith and suddenly finds himself hurtling through a psychedelic corridor of light and color in what's known as the Stargate sequence. He then appears in an elegantly furnished white room where he rapidly ages, watching himself eat dinner as an old man, then lying on a deathbed as an ancient figure. The monolith appears at the foot of his bed, and Bowman transforms into a glowing fetus floating in a transparent sphere above Earth, gazing down at the planet below. Kubrick deliberately refused to explain this transformation, leaving audiences to develop their own interpretations, ranging from human evolution to spiritual enlightenment to alien intervention. The final 20 minutes contain almost no dialogue, forcing viewers to derive meaning purely from visuals. Many people walked out of premiere screenings in confusion and frustration, The ending confused audiences because it abandoned conventional narrative structure entirely, presenting a cosmic transformation beyond human comprehension. Kubrick seemed to suggest that humanity's next evolutionary step would be as incomprehensible to current humans as modern civilization would be to early hominids. 12 Monkeys. James Cole travels back in time to stop a deadly virus in Terry Gilliam's 1995 thriller 12 Monkeys, but the film's conclusion reveals he's been chasing the wrong suspects while creating his own tragic fate. Throughout the story, Bruce Willis's character experiences recurring dreams of witnessing a shooting at an airport as a young child, watching a long-haired man get gunned down by security. The film's climax shows Cole and psychiatrist Catherine Rayleigh, played by Madeline Stowe, racing to stop a virologist named Dr. Peters from boarding a plane with stolen virus samples. Cole initially suspected the Army of the 12 Monkeys, a radical group founded by mental patient Jeffrey Goins, played by Brad Pitt in an Oscar-nominated performance. However, the Army only released zoo animals as a publicity stunt, not the virus. When Cole confronts Dr. Peters at the airport while disguised in a wig and Hawaiian shirt, security guns him down. The camera reveals that young Cole witnessed this event, meaning the adult Cole is both the child observer and the victim in his recurring dream. A scientist from the future sits next to Dr. Peters on the plane, suggesting the mission to obtain a pure virus sample succeeded despite Cole's death. The ending operates as a closed time loop where past events cannot be changed, only observed. Audiences found this confusing because, unlike typical time travel stories where heroes alter history, 12 Monkeys presents an unalterable timeline where Cole inadvertently fulfilled his own childhood trauma. Snowpiercer. The last remnants of humanity survive on a perpetually moving train in Bong Joon-ho's 2013 film Snowpiercer, but the climactic destruction of this mobile society left audiences debating whether the ending represented hope or horror. Chris Evans plays Curtis, who leads a rebellion from the impoverished tail section toward the engine, only to discover that Wilford, played by Ed Harris, deliberately orchestrated these uprisings as population control. Curtis learns that stolen children work as slaves inside the engine to replace worn parts. Namgung and his daughter Yona detonate explosives that destroy the train and trigger an avalanche that kills everyone still aboard. Only Yona and a young child named Timmy survive, emerging from the wreckage to see a polar bear in the distance. Director Bong confirmed the polar bear indicates Earth's ecosystem is recovering, as this apex predator requires an entire food chain of seals, fish, and plant life to survive. He described the ending as very hopeful, stating the two survivors will eventually repopulate humanity. However, audiences saw something different. Two children who've never experienced the outside world, with zero survival skills, facing a predator in a frozen wasteland. The confusion arose from the stark contrast between the director's optimistic interpretation and viewers' perception of grimly ironic tragedy. Does destroying a corrupt system justify near total extinction? Can two train-born children really restart civilization? The ending refuses to answer these questions. By the way, if you're finding this interesting, I create content like this all the time. Subscribing would really help out. Clockwork Orange. Alex DeLarge undergoes experimental rehabilitation in Stanley Kubrick's 1971 adaptation, A Clockwork Orange, but the film's conclusion left audiences uncertain whether the violent sociopath improved, worsened, or remained exactly the same. Malcolm McDowell plays Alex, a delinquent in dystopian Britain who commits acts of extreme violence while listening to Beethoven. After imprisonment, he becomes the test subject for the Ludovico technique, an aversion therapy using psychological torture that conditions him to become violently ill at thoughts of violence or hearing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Following an attempted act of self-inflicted harm, the government reverses the treatment to hide their illegal human experimentation. The final scene shows Alex fantasizing about consensual relations while listening to Beethoven, stating, "I was cured all right." Kubrick omitted author Anthony Burgess's final chapter, where Alex genuinely matures and abandons violence, a decision that sparked controversy for decades. The American publishers had already cut this 21st chapter before Kubrick adapted the novel, and the director only learned of the original ending after filming completed. Burgess defended his redemptive conclusion throughout his life, believing the story meaningless without hope for change. The confusion stems from multiple interpretations. Has Alex been cured of the treatment, returning to his original evil nature? Has he been cured of violence, becoming a functional citizen? Or has he been transformed into something worse, a government puppet? The film forces viewers to question whether artificial goodness has any value, and whether freely chosen evil is more human than coerced virtue. The Mist. David Drayton makes an impossible choice in Frank Darabont's 2007 adaptation, The Mist, and the timing of his decision created one of horror cinema's most devastating endings. Based on Stephen King's 1980 novella, the film follows Thomas Jane's character protecting his son Billy from interdimensional creatures that emerge after a government experiment called the Arrowhead Project accidentally opens a portal. After escaping a supermarket where religious fanatic Mrs. Carmody demands human sacrifices, David's group runs out of gas while a massive monster approaches. Believing no hope remains, David uses his gun to kill all 4 passengers, including his own young son, to spare them from being torn apart by creatures. Immediately after these mercy killings, the mist clears and military convoys arrive, rescuing survivors. David collapses in anguish, realizing he murdered everyone, including his child, mere minutes before salvation arrived. King's original novella ended ambiguously, with the group driving into uncertainty after hearing Hartford on the radio. Darabont changed this, feeling the novella's conclusion lacked impact, and King later told Yahoo Entertainment he wished he'd thought of the darker ending himself. The film grossed $57 million worldwide and earned a 73% Rotten Tomatoes score. Audiences found this ending confusing and controversial because it punishes the protagonist for making a seemingly rational decision, with the military's perfectly timed arrival feeling either like profound tragedy about hasty choices or deliberate audience manipulation. Many viewers argued David's decision contradicted his earlier determination to survive, while others defended it as realistic desperation. The confusion arose from whether this ending serves the story's themes or exists purely for shock value. The Shining. Jack Torrance freezes to death in a hedge maze in Stanley Kubrick's 1980 horror classic, The Shining. But the film's final image raised more questions than it answered. After Jack Nicholson's character descends into murderous madness at the isolated Overlook Hotel and dies trying to kill his wife Wendy and son Danny, the camera slowly zooms in on a black and white photograph hanging in the hotel corridor. The photo shows a July 4th ball from 1921, and standing prominently in the center is Jack Torrance, grinning widely despite the event occurring 59 years before the film's 1980 setting. Kubrick added this photograph as his own contribution to Stephen King's novel, and he never explained its meaning. Theories range from Jack being the reincarnation of a previous caretaker to his spirit being absorbed into the hotel's collection of ghosts. Some interpretations suggest Jack was always the hotel's caretaker across multiple lifetimes, while others propose the Overlook exists outside normal linear time. The confusion stems from the photograph's impossibility within conventional narrative logic. If Jack appears in a 1921 photo, does that mean he's destined to return repeatedly? Is he a ghost who is always part of the hotel? Or does the hotel somehow exist simultaneously across different time periods? Kubrick deliberately crafted this ambiguity to serve the film's horror, suggesting the hotel's true nature remains incomprehensible to human understanding. American Psycho. Patrick Bateman attempts to confess his murders in Mary Harron's 2000 adaptation American Psycho, but the film's conclusion questions whether any of his violent acts actually occurred. Christian Bale plays the wealthy investment banker who appears to kill numerous people throughout the story. When Bateman tries confessing these crimes to his lawyer, the attorney dismisses him and claims one victim, Paul Allen, is alive and currently in London. Bateman's apartment where he supposedly kept bodies is spotless, with no evidence. The final scene shows Bateman sitting with colleagues as his confession is ignored, his internal narration revealing he experienced no catharsis or personal growth. The film presents Bateman as an unreliable narrator, forcing audiences to question whether his elaborate murder spree was real or purely fantasy. Some interpret the ending as suggesting Bateman's wealth and status allowed him to literally get away with murder in a society that doesn't care. Others believe the violence existed entirely in Bateman's disturbed mind as a manifestation of his empty, consumerist existence. The confusion arises from the ending's refusal to confirm which interpretation is correct. Whether the murders happened or not, Bateman remains a dangerous, depraved person, and the society around him remains indifferent to his confession either way. The film's satirical examination of 1980s yuppie culture works regardless of the violence's reality, making the distinction ultimately meaningless to its themes about moral bankruptcy. Old Men. Sheriff Ed Tom Bell retires and recounts dreams about his deceased father in the Coen brothers' 2007 thriller No Country for Old Men. And then the film abruptly cuts to black. The Oscar-winning Best Picture follows Hunter Llewellyn Moss, played by Josh Brolin, who finds drug money and gets pursued by killer Anton Chigurh, played by Javier Bardem. Tommy Lee Jones plays Sheriff Bell, who tracks both men through 1980 West Texas. Moss gets killed off-screen by cartel members rather than in the expected confrontation with Chigurh. Bell retires without ever facing the antagonist and tells his wife with about 2 dreams involving his father. In the second dream, his father rides past carrying fire in a horn, waiting for Bell in the darkness ahead. Bell says, "And then I woke up," and the film immediately ends with no resolution of Chigurh's storyline. The confusion stemmed from audiences expecting a traditional climactic confrontation between lawman and villain that never arrives. The Coen brothers deliberately subverted thriller genre conventions to emphasize themes about aging lawmen unable to comprehend or stop modern evil. Bell's dreams suggest he seeks his father's guidance about a world where old moral certainties no longer apply. Shigura walking away from a car crash earlier represents evil that cannot be stopped or punished, but simply continues existing. The abrupt ending forces viewers to sit with Bell's resignation that the world has become incomprehensible to him. Donnie Darko. A teenager experiences visions of a man in a rabbit suit predicting the apocalypse in Richard Kelly's 2001 cult film, Donnie Darko. But the ending's revelation about time travel and sacrifice left most viewers thoroughly confused. Jake Gyllenhaal plays the title character, who receives warnings from Frank the Rabbit that the world will end in 28 days on October 30th, 1988. The film took 28 days to shoot, matching the story's time span. A jet engine falls from the sky and crashes into Donnie's bedroom while he's sleepwalking, sparing his life. The mysterious events that follow may occur in a tangent universe created when Donnie escaped death. The ending shows Donnie lying in bed laughing as the jet engine falls again, this time killing him. The film rewinds, showing the previous 28 days as if they never happened, though other characters retain vague memories of this alternate timeline. Whether these events involved actual time travel, represented schizophrenic delusions, or depicted some metaphysical journey remains deliberately unclear. Kelly's labyrinthine plot confused mainstream audiences while creating a devoted cult following. The film works simultaneously as a time travel paradox, a portrait of mental illness, and a supernatural journey. Donnie's final laugh suggests he understands his death prevents some greater catastrophe, but the film refuses to confirm whether his experiences were real or products of a troubled mind. The confusion was intentional, requiring multiple viewings to piece together possible interpretation. If you found this valuable, consider subscribing so you never miss new content. Thanks for watching.